Donald Trump posted 8 words on social media, just 8. Send them back to where they came from. It's over now. And in response, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar posted 11. I am a citizen, and so are majority of Somali in America. One of those statements is a threat disguised as policy. The other is a constitutional fact. And the fact that we're having to debate which one matters more tells you everything you need to know about where we are as a country right now. When a sitting president acts like he can decide who belongs in America based on whether he likes what they say, and a member of Congress has to remind him that citizenship isn't negotiable. What's at stake isn't immigration policy. Donald Trump didn't announce a policy change. He didn't issue an executive order. He didn't go through any legal process. He posted a threat on social media and acted like that was enough to strip protection from tens of thousands of people who are here legally. And here's what should terrify you. He's done this before, and he'll do it again, because every time he crosses a line, and nothing stops him, the next line gets easier to cross. So let me be clear about something. This isn't about one post. It's about a pattern. And the pattern is this. Donald Trump believes the presidency gives him the power to decide who counts as American and who doesn't. Not based on the law. And when someone like Ilhan Omar stands up and says, I'm a citizen and the Constitution protects me, what she's really saying is this: you don't get to rewrite the rules just because you don't like who's using them. Now, Trump's target this time was people under temporary protected status, TPS. That's a program created by Congress, signed into law, with clear rules about who qualifies, how long it lasts, and what process. There's a process, and that process exists for a reason. But here's what Trump is counting on. He's counting on most people not knowing how TPS works. He's counting on fear doing the work that the law won't allow. He posts, it's over now. And suddenly families who've been here legally for years, who've built lives, even though nothing has legally changed, that's not governance, that's intimidation. And let's talk about what he's really doing, because this isn't about border security. This isn't about vetting. This is about using the fear of deportation as a weapon against anyone who dares to speak up. Ilhan Omar is a natural, and Donald Trump has spent years trying to delegitimize her, trying to make people believe she's less American than anyone else, trying to turn her citizenship into something conditional. You see the game. If he can make people believe that a sitting member of Congress doesn't really belong here, then he can make them believe it about anyone. That's the point. It's not about one person. It's about normalizing the idea that some citizens are more American than others. Now, here's why Ilhan Omar's response matters so much. She didn't get defensive. She didn't argue about where she was born or how long she's been here. She said one word that cuts through all of it. It's supposed to mean the law protects you, whether the president likes you or not. And when Donald Trump acts like citizenship is something he can revoke with a post, he's not just attacking Ilhan Omar. He's attacking the entire legal foundation that separates a democracy from an autocracy. I sat in the Oval Office for 8 years. I know what power feels like, and I can tell you this: the most dangerous thing a president can believe is that the rules don't apply to him. Because once a president starts acting like the law is optional, like he can decide who's protected and who isn't based on loyalty, you don't have a democracy anymore. You have something else. And here's the part that should keep you up at night. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't about what might happen. This is about what is happening right now. Donald Trump has repeatedly used his platform, his office, and his power to target people who criticize him. He's called American citizen. He's told elected representatives to go back where they came from. He's threatened to revoke protections from vulnerable communities because it plays well with his base. And every single time he tests whether anyone is going to stop him. So when Ilhan Omar responds by saying, I am a citizen, what she's really doing is drawing a line. She's saying this far, no further. She's reminding everyone that citizenship isn't a gift from the president. But here's what worries me. Lines only hold if people defend them. And right now, we're watching a president act like those lines don't exist. And too many people are staying silent because they think it doesn't affect them. They think, well, that's exactly what Trump is counting on, because authoritarians never start with everyone. They start with a small group, a group they can convince the majority doesn't matter, doesn't count, doesn't deserve protection. And once people accept that, once they accept that some citizens are conditional, then the definition of who's safe just keeps shrinking. Let me look for more examples of strong midsection structure and consequences framing. This is how it always starts. Not with everyone, just with the people you can afford to lose. The people you've been taught to see as different, as foreign, as not really one of us. And by the time the definition expands to include you, so let's talk about what happens next if we accept what Trump is doing here, because this isn't theoretical. This is a roadmap that's been followed before in other countries, and the destination is always the same. First, you accept that the president can target one group of legal residents without due process. Today, it's Somalis under TPS. Tomorrow, it's anyone with an accent, anyone who wasn't born here, anyone whose family came from a country the president doesn't like. Once you establish the principle that some legal residents are disposable, the only question is, who's next? Second, you accept that criticism of the president as grounds for losing your protection, because that's what this is really about. Ilhan Omar didn't just happen to be Somali. She's been one of Trump's most vocal critics. She's called out his abuse. And now, conveniently, Trump is threatening the community she represents. You think that's a coincidence. This is retaliation disguised as policy. And if you let a president use deportation threats as punishment for political dissent, you don't have free speech anymore. You have permission to speak, as long as you say the right thing. Third, you create a climate of fear where people stop speaking up because they're watching what happens to Ilhan Omar, what happens to Somali families in Minnesota, and they're thinking, I can't afford to be next. So they stay quiet. They don't criticize. And that's exactly the point. Authoritarians don't need to silence everyone. They just need to silence enough people that the rest police themselves. Now, here's where this gets really dangerous, because Trump isn't just targeting Ilhan Omar. He's training the next president. He's showing them that you can weaponize immigration enforcement against your political enemies, and half the country will cheer you on as long as you tell them. It's about every single abuse of power that goes unchallenged becomes a precedent. Every line that gets crossed without consequence becomes the new baseline, and the president who comes after Trump, whether that's 4 years from now or 8 years from now, they're going to remember that Trump threatened to deport legal residents because he didn't like what they said, and nobody stopped him. And then they're going to ask themselves, if Trump could do that, why can't I? That's how democracies die. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small surrenders, one precedent at a time, one exception at a time, one group at a time, until the day you wake up and realize the country you thought. Now, let's be very clear about what temporary protected status actually is, because Trump is counting on you not knowing. TPS was created by Congress in 1990. It's a legal status granted to people from countries experiencing armed conflict. It has to be renewed periodically, and there's a process for ending it. That process doesn't include the president posting on social media. It requires the Secretary of Homeland Security to publish a notice in the Federal Register, provide a justification, and give people time to prepare. It requires following the law. Somalia has had TPS designation on and off for years because of the ongoing security situation there. People came here legally. Under that protection, they've been here for years. Some for decades. They've worked, paid taxes, raised, and now Donald Trump says it's over now, like he's canceling a TV show. Except he can't, because the law doesn't work that way. TPS doesn't end because the president is angry. It ends when the legal process is followed. But here's what Trump understands. The fear works even. They're afraid to go to work, afraid to take their kids to school, afraid that ICE is going to show up at their door. That's the goal, not actual policy. Fear intimidation, punishment for anyone who dares to criticize him. And what makes this even more dangerous is that Trump has a long history of saying things that aren't true, aren't legal, and aren't happening, but creating chaos anyway. He said he was going to ban all Muslims from entering the country. He said he was going to deploy the military to shoot migrants at the border. None of those things happened the way he said they would, because the law wouldn't allow it. But the threat itself did damage. It created fear. It emboldened his supporters to target vulnerable communities. It sent a message about, and that's what he's doing now. He's not actually changing TPS through legal process. He's creating fear and uncertainty. He's weaponizing the threat of deportation, and he's daring anyone to stop him. Now, here's what happens if we don't. If we accept that this is normal, if we shrug and say, well, that's just Trump being Trump, if we let this become another outrage that we're numb to by next week. First, the agencies start taking their cues from the president's tone, not from the law. ICE agents, Customs, and Border Protection, they're watching what the president says, and some of them are going to act on it even without formal policy changes. We've seen when Trump says immigrants are criminals and rapists. Hate crimes against Latinos spike. When he says Muslims are terrorists, mosques get vandalized. Words from a president have power, even when they're lies. Second, Congress learns that they don't have to do their jobs anymore. Why pass legislation? Why go through the hard work of building coalitions and making compromise when the president can't just announce policy changes? And third, the next crisis becomes easier because if Trump can threaten deportation for Somali refugees today, the next president can threaten it for whoever they decide is the problem. Venezuelans, Ukrainians, Afghans, and you know what the really insidious part is. This playbook isn't new. We've seen it before. Not in America, not exactly like this, but we've seen it in other countries where democracies slowly became something else. It always starts the same way. You pick a group that's easy to demonize, a group that's visible, that's different, that doesn't have a lot of political power. You declare them a threat. You question whether they really belong. In 1930s Germany, it started with stripping citizenship from Jewish people. In 1970s Argentina, it was political dissidents who disappeared. You remove legal protections. You normalize the idea that some people don't deserve rights, and then you expand the definition of who those people are. Now, I'm not saying we're there yet, but I am saying that every single one of those countries thought they were immune. They thought their institutions were too strong, their democracy too established, their people too educated to let it happen. And they were wrong, because here's what history teaches us. Democracies don't die all at once. They die when people decide that protecting certain rights is too inconvenient, too complicated, too politically costly. They die when leaders test boundaries and nobody pushes back. They die when citizens see injustice happening to someone else and think, well, at least it's not happening to me. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is counting on right now. He's counting on you thinking this is about Somalis, not about you. He's counting on you believing that citizenship for some people is negotiable and that yours never will be. But let me tell you something I learned in 8 years as president. The law doesn't work that way. Once you establish that the president can decide who deserves constitutional protection and who doesn't, there's no limiting principle. There's nothing. Maybe you criticize the president on social media. Maybe you donated to the wrong political campaign. Maybe you just happen to come from a place the president decides he doesn't like. The mechanism is the same. The only question is who's next? And here's what makes Ilhan Omar's response so important. She didn't argue that Somalis are different from other immigrants or that they deserve special protection. She didn't try to prove how American she is. She said something much more fundamental. I am a citizen. That's it. That's the whole argument. And in America, it should be the only argument that matters, because Citizenship isn't conditional. It's not something the president grants or revokes based on whether he likes you. It's a constitutional status, and it comes with protections that the government can't just ignore. The 14th Amendment is very clear. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. That includes the federal government. That includes the president. And it means that once you're a citizen, the government can't treat you as less than one just because you were born somewhere else or because you criticize the people in power. But here's the thing about constitutional rights. They only work if people defend them. They only matter if we collectively agree that they're not negotiable, that they apply to everyone, that they limit what the government can do, even when it's politically popular to ignore them. And right now, we're at a moment where we have to decide, are we going to defend the principle that citizenship means something, that it protects you from arbitrary government action, that it applies to everyone equally? Or are we going to accept that some citizens are more conditional than others, that the president gets to decide who belongs based on loyalty, and that constitutional protections only apply when they're convenient? Because if we choose the second path, we're not just failing Somali Americans in Minnesota, we're dismantling the legal architecture that protects all of us. Now, I want to talk directly to you for a minute because I know there are people watching this who think Trump is right, who think that if Omar and other Somalis don't like America, they should leave, who think that questioning the president means you don't deserve to be here. And I want you to ask yourself something. Do you really want to live in a country where criticizing the president is grounds for deportation, where the government can threaten your legal status because you said something they didn't like, where your rights depend on whether you stay quiet and grateful? Because that's the country Trump is building, not just for Somalis, for everyone. The mechanism doesn't care who you are or what you believe. Once it exists, it can be used on anyone, and here's what should terrify you. Trump isn't even trying to hide it anymore. He's not pretending this is about security or vetting or legal process. He's saying out loud that people who criticize him should be sent back where they came from. He's making it clear that that's not a president, that's something else. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but Congress will stop him, the courts will stop him, the system will hold, and maybe you're right. Maybe the institutions will do their jobs this time. But let me tell you what I've learned watching democracies around the world. The institutions only work if the people inside them are willing to defend them. If senators and representatives decide that staying in Trump's good graces matters more than their constitution, if you just decide that avoiding controversy is more important than upholding the loopholes, won't stop him. And if citizens decide that this doesn't affect them, that it's just politics, that they're too tired to care, then nobody will stop him. That's how it happens, not with tanks in the streets, not with a dramatic coup, but with 1,000 small moments where people who could have said no decided it wasn't worth the fight. Every translator who helped American troops in Afghanistan is watching this. Every refugee who thought America kept its promises is watching this. Every immigrant who played by the rules, came here legally, built there, and they're learning the same lesson Trump wants Ilhan Omar to learn. Your safety is conditional. Your rights are negotiable. And if you step out of line, we can take it all away. That's not the America I served. That's not the America most of you believe in. But it's the America we're going to get if we don't draw a line right here, right now, and say this far, no further. So let's get down to what this moment really demands from all of us. Because what happens next isn't up to Donald Trump or Ilhan Omar. It's up to you. You have to decide if you're okay with a president who thinks he can strip legal protection from people because he doesn't like what they say. You have to decide if you believe citizenship is something the government grants conditionally, or if it's a constitutional status that protects everyone equally. And here's the uncomfortable part. You don't get to wait and see how this plays out, because by the time it becomes clear where this is headed, it's usually too late to stop it. History is full of moments where good people saw something dangerous happening and told themselves, someone else will deal with this, the institutions will hold, it'll work itself out, and then it didn't, because institutions don't defend themselves. People, and when enough people decide It's not their problem. The institutions collapse. So I'm asking you directly, what are you going to do? Are you going to call your representatives and demand they push back on this? Are you going to make it clear that threatening deportation as political retaliation? Are you going to defend the principle that citizenship means something, even when it protects people you disagree with? Or are you going to tell yourself this doesn't affect you, that Trump is just blowing off steam, that nothing will really change? Because if you choose the second path, you're making a choice. You're deciding that constitutional protections are negotiable. You're accepting that the president can weaponize government power against his critics. You're teaching the next president that this is allowed. And when they come for you, when your rights are the ones being threatened, when your citizenship is the one being questioned, there won't be anyone left to speak up because you stayed silent when it mattered. Now, let me be clear about something. I'm not asking you to agree with Ilhan Omar on every issue. I'm not asking you to support her politics. I'm asking you to defend the principle that even people you disagree with have constitutional rights, that the president can't simply... That's not about Omar. That's about the rule of law. That's about whether we live in a democracy or something else. And here's the question I want you to think about, the question that matters more than anything else right now. If a president can tell an American citizen, an elected member of Congress, go back where you came from, it's over now, and face no consequences, what can't he do? If he can threaten thousands of legal residents with deportation because their representative criticized him, what line won't he cross? If he can decide that some citizens deserve protection and others don't based on loyalty, what's left of the Constitution? Because ultimately, this comes down to a very simple choice. Either the law is above the president or the president is above the law. Both can't be true at the same time. And right now, Donald Trump is testing which one we believe. He's watching to see if anyone stops him. He's measuring how much he can get away with, and every day that passes without consequences, he learns the answer is more. So here's my question for you, and I want you to answer it honestly, not just to me, but to yourself. Do you believe a president should be able to threaten American citizens with deportation because they criticize him? Yes or no? Because if your answer is no, then you have to act like it. You have to demand accountability. You have to defend the principle that citizenship isn't conditional, that constitutional protections apply to everyone, that the president is bound by law. And if your answer is yes, then you need to understand what you're accepting. You're accepting that your rights depend on staying in the president's good graces. You're accepting that future presidents can use, accepting that we're not a democracy anymore. Those are the stakes. Not in some hypothetical future, but right now, today, with this president, with this threat, with this moment. What we do next will determine what kind of country we leave to our children, and we don't get to pretend we didn't see it coming.